guys, it's Cassie and welcome back to my channel. It has been a long time since I've uploaded anything. The last video I uploaded was my gender neutral baby clothing haul that I uploaded in August, and it is now the middle of October, so obviously that is a long time to just fall off the face of the earth. But I had my wonderful baby boy. He ended up coming 2.5 weeks early. So that's kind of where I've been. I was in the process of filming a nursery organization tour video, and then he ended up being born and the nursery wasn't quite done. So I've since scrapped that video, and we still do have a few more things to put in the nursery. He's not quite using the nursery yet. Once our nursery is complete, I will do a nursery tour video. But I am here with my labor and delivery story. So I am a first-time mom. This is my first labor and delivery experience, and it was not a typical one. So if you want to hear the story about how my baby was accidentally born at home, then just keep on watching. I've tried to film this video a couple of times, but my labor and delivery story is just so crazy that it took me a little while to kind of wrap my head around everything. And then I did film the video last week, and then I kind of watched it back and I didn't like it because I was all over the place. So I have since made notes to hopefully help me keep everything together. It's due on October 3rd, and Camden ended up being born on September 16th. So he was born about 2.5 weeks early. I'm also going to point out that my birth plan had me staying at home until I was about 6 or 7 centimeters. I use midwives, so they do come visit you at your home and kind of check you out, see how far along you are progressing in labor and things like that. I was hoping to avoid the epidural, so that was kind of a plan that I made with my midwives in order to do that. So I'm just going to put that out there. The labor and delivery story, I guess you could say, starts on Thursday, September 12th. So Thursday, September 12th, I was at work. I had to get up from my desk to try and find somebody. So I was kind of wandering around the building for 15 minutes or so, trying to find somebody, kind of alternating between using the elevator and the stairs, just because I didn't want to keep waiting for the elevator. And so I'd say it was about 15-20 minutes, and on my way back to my desk, I stopped for the bathroom because I was already up. When I went to the bathroom, I realized that I had lost my mucus plug. So for those of you that don't know, your mucus plug is what kind of surrounds your cervix when you become pregnant as like an extra barrier to protect your baby. When you lose your mucus plug, it doesn't necessarily mean that labor is on its way, because your mucus plug can grow back, and women lose their mucus plug at different stages throughout pregnancy. They can lose it the day they go into labor, they can lose it during labor, they can not even notice that they lost it at all. They can lose it a week before labor, all of that stuff. So I was obviously excited, but it was kind of hard to predict what was going on next. That night, I woke up in the middle of the night about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I kind of felt like a rush of fluid. And it wasn't enough to cover my bed or anything, but it was enough to kind of make me question whether or not my water had broke. So I got up, I went to the bathroom, and when I sat down again, I kind of felt like a bunch of fluid had kind of fallen out, and I was like, oh, that's really weird. I was GBS negative, so it wasn't imminent that I call my midwife to be like, I think my water broke. So I decided to go back to bed. I was like, if my water did break, contractions in theory should start soon. If not, I'll call the midwives in the morning. So when I got up in the morning, it wasn't really obvious whether or not my water had broken. It was still questionable. I was kind of confused because there was definitely an increase in fluid, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't feel like I was peeing, but I went about my day. And while Connor and I were out, I was walking around and I was like, I feel like I'm actively peeing myself. I was feeling liquid come out. So I ended up calling my midwife and told her what happened, and she was like, you know what, just come on into the clinic, we'll check you out. She was like, I don't think your water's broken, but it never hurts to kind of take a look. So she did a cervical examination, and she was like, no, but you do have a big increase in vaginal fluid, and I'm not quite sure why. Sometimes as you near labor, this happens. So just kind of keep an eye on things. She's like, but for now, it's not your water. I was like, okay. So I went to work. About 24 hours later, I started seeing blood in my discharge, which is also known as the bloody show. So your bloody show is when your cervix is changing, and so it becomes irritated and starts bleeding a little bit. So it is normal. I knew it wasn't like irritation from my cervical exam just because of how long afterwards it had been. They usually say it's like within 12 hours, and it was about 24 hours later that I noticed I started bleeding. So this was now on Saturday the 14th. So I kind of figured that, you know, this baby is coming soon. So the Sunday, Connor and I spent the day just kind of hanging out. I was bouncing around on my exercise ball. We went for a couple walks. I was kind of cramping on and off, but it was nothing consistent. I had been experiencing Braxton Hicks since August, and then period-like cramps that didn't follow a pattern probably since the end of August, so it didn't necessarily mean anything. But on the morning of September 16th at 2 a.m., I woke up from contractions. I went to bed about midnight, 12:30 that night, and then I got woken up at 2 a.m. for having contractions. So I decided to get into the bath and kind of see what happened, because if it's just early labor, we'll tend to kind of slow down labor, and it's kind of a good indicator as to whether or not you're actually in labor. So I got in the bath and I soaked for about an hour, and just those contractions kept on coming. So I decided that I was going to wake up Connor, and we went to the living room and we timed the contractions. They were about 6 to 8 minutes apart, lasting about 40 seconds. So we put on a movie and we just kind of hung out for a bit. Around 6 a.m., I text my mom because my parents live an hour and a half away, and I wanted my mom to obviously be there. So I knew she was going to be up for work that day, so I sent her a text and was like, hey, I'm pretty sure, you know, this is it, like, I'm in labor. And so she asked kind of like why I thought that. I explained to her and she was like, yep, that sounds like labor. And her and my dad were gonna get everybody off to work and school for the day, and then they were gonna come out. Contractions really weren't that painful. I just would kind of rock on my exercise ball and breathe through them, and I found that it really helped. It was super manageable. My parents got up about 9 o'clock, 9:30, hung around the apartment, just kind of doing whatever. And my midwives want you to call them when your contractions are 5 minutes apart, lasting for a minute, lasting for at least 1 hour. Kind of the standard rule, I'm pretty sure, for most midwives and doctors. So around 10:30, I think it's 10:30, they started to follow that 5-1-1 pattern. So I gave the midwife a call. They were like, how are you feeling? I was like, oh, you know, they're uncomfortable, don't get me wrong, but they're not super painful, totally bearable. We're like, okay, you're probably just in early labor. Do you want us to come check you out? Are you okay to kind of hang out for a bit? And I was like, yeah, no, I'm totally fine. And so the reason why I said that is because I didn't want them to come out and be like, you're a centimeter and a half, and I had been in labor since 2 a.m. So in order to avoid getting discouraged, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm totally cool. So they were like, keep an eye out for your water breaking. If the contractions become 4 minutes apart, lasting for a minute, lasting for an hour, give us a call. Or if at any point they become super unbearable, call us back. Okay, no problem. So around 1 o'clock, I decided I was going to get into the bath. The contractions were getting closer to 4 minutes, but they were not consistent, and they weren't lasting a full minute. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go have a bath. I'll get out and I'll time them, and then we'll go from there. So I went in, I had a bath for about an hour, and I swear I fell asleep in the bath, and that is really important to know. I was not in that much pain whatsoever. So when I got out from the bath, I sat down on the toilet, and there was like a burst of fluid. It felt like somebody popped a balloon inside of my vagina. It was the weirdest thing ever, and fluid went shooting everywhere, and I was like, oh my god, I think my water just broke for real. I stood up from the toilet, and then fluid just kind of kept coming, and I was like, yeah, that was definitely my water. So I called my midwife and I was like, hey, my water just broke. They were like, how are you feeling? And I was like, contractions are a little more intense. I definitely have to focus, but they're still bearable. They're closer to 4 minutes, but they're not quite there. I was like, and I'm pretty sure I just fell asleep in the bath. And they were like, okay. So that was at 2:15 that I called them. And they were like, okay, so are you good if we finish up and head over to you around 4:30? And I was like, yeah, totally. Again, the contractions were not painful, so I thought that I was still in early labor, I still had a long way to go, and I just wanted to hang out at home. I didn't want them to come out and then be like, all right, now you're 3 centimeters dilated and you still have so much more to go. So I had asked my mom to make me white mac and cheese. I was really craving white mac and cheese. And then all of a sudden, my contractions became super painful. and I had about 3 really, really intense, painful contractions, and I asked Connor to call the midwife. And I looked back on my phone, and that was at 2:56 p.m. So from 2:15 when my water broke, and I spoke to them, about my water breaking, to 2:56, my contractions got super intense. And so he calls them, and they're like, all right, we're on our way. But I could not get myself to get up off of the toilet. I was in so much pain, and sitting on the toilet felt really good. So my mom comes in, and she was like, are you okay? And I was like, oh yeah, I just, sitting on the toilet feels good. And then I had a contraction, was like, oh my God, I can't do this. This really hurts. And she was like, all right, well, let's get you up off the toilet. And I was like, I can't get up. And she was like, what? And I was like, I feel like I have to push. And she was like, what? I was like, I feel like I have to push. So she gets me up off the toilet, tells Connor to call the midwife, and he calls at 3:02. So from 2:56, when all of a sudden my contractions went from being super painful, to 3:02, I felt the urge to push. So they get me down on my bed. My mom kind of takes a look, and she didn't say anything at the time, but she says afterwards that she kind of looked down and was like, yep, there's a head. So Connor calls back pain service, and he's like, now she's got to push. And they're like, okay, so your midwives are on your way, but you need to call 911. The ambulance is most likely to get there before they do. So just in case, just so somebody's there, try and resist the urge, to tell her to resist the urge to push. Let me tell you, when you have to push, there is no resisting the urge to push. I start freaking out because I went from being super calm and collected, and I was breathing through my contractions, to being in so much pain that I was thrown off guard. I'm listening to Connor and my mom talk, and I realize that I'm having this baby at home. So I just start yelling. I don't know what to do, and so screaming is the only thing that feels good. I can't get a hold of my breath. I'm out of breath, I'm hyperventilating, I'm really hot. I'm like asking my mom to like rip off my clothes. I wanted them to bring me a fan. It was like so dramatic. Mom is up beside me. Connor is down between my legs on the phone with 911. And I guess they had asked him, do you see the head? And he's looking, and he looks at my mom, and she nods, and he was like, yes, I see the head. And I'm freaking out. I'm yelling. I'm like, I just want somebody to be here. I do not want to deliver this baby at home with no medical professionals around here. So dispatch stays on the phone with Connor as we're waiting for the paramedics to arrive. So the paramedics arrive, they strap all these things to me, and then they just stand there. They don't like take over or anything. They're just like, midwife's on the way? Okay. Luckily, my midwife came in about 2 minutes later, so she comes running in at 3:25 p.m. I looked back on my chart afterwards, and that was the time that said that she arrived, was 3:25. So she comes in and was like, oh my God, we're having a baby. So she introduces herself to the paramedics, and she's like, I don't have my home birth kit. Like, do you have some, like a home birth kit essentially? And they were like, yep. So they're getting things together, and a student midwife arrives, and everything's going on. And Camden was born at 3:31 p.m. 6 minutes after my midwife arrived at my house. So, yeah, 3:31 p.m. on September 16th, my baby boy, Camden Riley, was born at home on my bed. All natural. That ring of fire that you hear people talk about, it burns. Afterwards, I was talking with, nobody can believe this happened. And when we tell people that Camden was born at home, everyone is like, well, why didn't you go to the hospital? And I stress over and over again, like, I was not in that much pain up until 2:56 p.m. when we called the midwives again for the third time and said, come on over, these contractions are unbearable. I was rocking on my exercise ball. I was breathing through my contractions, and then I went back to being fine. And so I was like, you know what, I'm in early labor. There's no way that this is active labor whatsoever. I don't know at what point I transitioned, or if it happened super fast, or nobody really knows what happened. My midwives are convinced that I spent a majority of the time in early labor and then just kind of like raced through the last 2 stages of labor. So my mom was saying afterwards that as Connor's on the phone with 911, he keeps leaving the room because they're telling him like, grab a towel, do this, do that. He's trying to clear the way for everybody to be able to come in. And in her head, every time he leaves the room, she's like, don't you dare leave the room, like come back, like I'm not delivering this baby on my own. Yeah. So we're super lucky. Camden was born a nice, healthy 7 pounds and 15 ounces at 37 weeks and 4 days. He was 20.5 inches long, had no problems breathing, came out and was like ready to go. I didn't know whether or not I was having a boy or a girl, and I remember, you know, he's coming out and I'm so relieved because like finally all that pain is gone. And they're holding him up and they're like, what do we have? And I'm laying there with my eyes closed and they're like, Sandra, what do we have? And I like open my eyes and I'm like, it's a boy. Like it was definitely not the, you know, oh my God, super emotional experience that I imagined. I was very traumatized. You know, giving birth on my bed at home, almost with no medical professionals, was not at all what I had in my birth plan. That's my labor and delivery story. It sounds crazy. I wouldn't even believe it if it didn't happen to me. And it did, I mean, it did happen to me and I sometimes don't even believe it. Like it blows my mind. I cannot believe that I had my baby at home. I will say, labor is definitely not as bad as I had imagined. And even, you know, when I was in excruciating pain and screaming my head off, I think had I been better prepared for that moment and had my midwives been there, I don't think it would have been as intense as it was, and I don't think it would have been as painful as it was. All in all, labor and delivery is not actually as bad, and the relief that you get from like the second that the head and the shoulders are out, there's so much relief. Like it almost feels amazing. It's really weird. Next time, if I do have a baby again, we are probably planning a home delivery because I'm not even going to try to make it to the hospital. My midwives even said that. They were like, all right, next time we're just going to plan for home birth and we're going to set up our equipment the second that you say that you're in labor. Guys, thanks for watching my not so typical labor and delivery story there. If you're interested in following Camden and I's journey of, you know, becoming a first-time parent and kind of figuring out the whole parenting thing, then subscribe to my channel. And until next time, bye.